Hey everyone, Mike here from MLive.com. Joined by Justin Rogers. In a bit of injury news this week, the Lions kept Alex Carter, the third-round pick, the cornerback out of Stanford, kept him down on injured reserve. They had until Monday to activate him. That won't happen, even though he's healthy, or says he's healthy anyway. So it's kind of a peculiar predicament the Lions find themselves in. It was basically, if a healthy player, you could put an injured reserve to maintain the roster spot for someone who's probably going to contribute more this year, or you could bring him up and develop him, young guy, for next year. Lions elected to keep him down. What is your opinion of that decision?
I get the logic. I think I would have kept him up, even with the idea that he doesn't contribute. In I guess the same vein, they kept Nick Fairley up all last season, knowing that he probably wouldn't contribute during the regular season. I think the practice time would have been valuable to Alex Carter, not letting him practice for another long stretch, 5 weeks to end this season after not practicing most of the season start, not practicing most of training camp, missing a large chunk of the off season because his Stanford eligibility. I just think hurts his development. I would rather see him develop going into the 2016 season.
I know dissenting opinions on these things drive more interesting conversation, but I'm not going to be Skip Bayless and say something I don't believe in. I totally agree with you 100%. Here's the thing with Carter. Like, he was never really supposed to be a factor this year anyway, right? Like, he's a developmental player. Even as a third-round pick, he was not going to play much this year with Mathis and Slay out there and so forth. But, you know, like, he's by putting him down, you risk even more of him becoming the next Kyle Van Noy, a guy who misses way too much time, falls behind. By the time he gets back on the field, he has tons of ground to make up, and Van Noy, more than a year later, is still feeling those effects. And as you mentioned, Carter's a guy who barely practiced this year. He missed 6 of the 10 OTAs because he was wrapping up classes at Stanford. He comes back, does some things on his own time in the summer or whatever, then rolls the ankle a couple of days before training camp, basically has no training camp whatsoever, maybe like 1 or 2 random days when he realized the ankle still wasn't good, right? And he was gone. So he's had barely any practice time. Really, the past 3 weeks is the only time. He could use these final 5 weeks to get right. I mean, even Caldwell says he's way too far behind. Well, you know, as much respect as I give the Lions for getting back into the playoff picture or whatever, that's still a long shot. I think you still need to be thinking about your future, 2016, and obviously having Alex Carter out there for 5 more weeks to work with his teammates, to work with coaches, because when you're down like this, you can't even work on the side with position coaches, and so he's losing all kinds of developmental time. I think it's the wrong move for the long-term future and health of the Lions.
And this is who you're keeping over Alex Carter. You're keeping Bill Bentley and Cresden Butler. And respect to those guys. They've fought very hard to earn roster spots. They've gone through their own trials and tribulations, but I don't think either one is the future for the Lions, where Carter was drafted to be the long-term replacement for Rashean Mathis. Now, who knows what the next general manager will think of Alex Carter? Maybe he didn't like him coming out of the draft. Who knows? This Carter's time with the Lions might be very, very short, or he could be that replacement for Rashean Mathis. But to strip him of those 5 weeks of practice to keep Cresden Butler, who's playing a handful of special team snaps beyond the great pass breakup in Green Bay, or Bentley, who also played a handful of special team snaps in the last couple games, like it just, the reward there doesn't seem worth it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think keeping Carter down, to me, speaks again to where this club's head is, where Jim Caldwell, I mean, it's not his decision, but where Sheldon White's head is, which is on the immediate, which is on winning as many games as possible right now, even if realistically and historically speaking, you're not going to make the playoffs. But they're still thinking 2015 all the way, and not 2016, because obviously what's best for 2016 and forward is developing your third-round pick who's missed tremendous amounts of practice time, rather than voluntarily stripping him of that practice time, even though he's already healthy. It speaks completely to what we think Cresden Butler or Bill Bentley helps us maybe with a play or two here or there this year, helps us win a game or whatever this year, and that's what they're going for. And it's not the long-term health. And I just think that's the with all due respect to Sheldon White and the Lions, I just think that's the wrong call. But I really don't think the playoffs are a realistic thing. Mathematically, sure, and maybe it happens. But if it does, it'll be a tremendously historic event. And banking on the tremendous historic over the future and health and development of a player like this, I think is the wrong move.
I wonder at some level the position, how much that played into it. Durability at the cornerback position is notoriously not very good. And so if a Nevin Lawson or a Darius Slay were to suffer an injury and they'd have to go next guy up, Carter's not ready. He's not ready, and that's kind of the point there. They would have to take up another roster spot to bring on another guy off the street, cut a position somewhere else, whether it's linebacker, offensive line.
They're carrying an extra D tackle right now. I don't think Cujo's played in like 2 months, so you could cut there, promote Carter, and then just have him deactivated on Sundays. That doesn't have to affect the active roster. I just think having the 5 weeks of practice is indispensable, and by taking that away from him, you just increase the chances he'll never play for the Lions. That's the bottom line for me.
And even if you do have him on the roster, maybe it does get to the point where the season gets out of hand, and he does develop a little bit more that you do feel comfortable, and then he gets a little taste of game action in weeks 16 and 17. Again, practice is great. Yep. Game action's even better, and you've stripped that chance from him.
Right. If they're 6-9 or whatever going to that last game against the Bears, you can just throw him out there, let him get his thrill on, for a couple of plays, and that could be momentum into the offseason. Whereas now you've got him slumped over at his locker answering questions like this because he's so sad. It's just, I don't think it's good for the health of the kid. We saw it last year with Van Noy. That's on. Who knows? Alex Carter became a Pro Bowler even without the practice time this year. Who knows? But I just think that, as I've said before, I just think it increases the odds that he never plays for the Lions, and that to me is the wrong call for a 3rd round pick.
Agreed.
For Justin Rogers, I'm Kyle Mikey. We're MLive. Keep it right here.